I think the emails make it pretty clear what happened.
Right.
That the conclusions, the scientific conclusions of the NTP were not sufficiently compatible with the policy interests of water fluoridation.
Right.
And that the NIDCR and the CDC, which are principally concerned with promoting this policy,
right,
found that unacceptable. They went up the ladder to the Assistant Secretary of Health and
right,
convinced the Assistant Secretary to order the NTP to not release the report. That's what happened. On May 11th, 2022, NTP sends another email to the CDC and the NIDCR telling them the report is coming out next week, May 18th, okay? And that email was sent at 11:12 a.m.
Right.
There is a whole flurry of emails for the remainder of that day and into the next few days by the CDC and the NIDCR and the Assistant Secretary of Health and the Office of the Director at NIH. All of them talking about, oh my, what are we gonna do? Like, they were freaked out, okay? 2 minutes after the email that the NTP sent on May 11th, a director at CDC, Karen Hacker, forwards the announcement and says, we need to get on this ASAP. Please move this forward immediately. So CDC is concerned, okay? And within 5 hours on that day, May 11th, NTP's director, Richard Wojcik, emails his colleagues at the NTP with the disappointing news that, quote, just received word that Admiral Levine wants an official HHS review and clearance of the report before it goes out. So that's within 6 hours of the announcement that the NTP is going to publish this report next week. Nope, the Assistant Secretary of Health wants to review it. So things are on hold, okay? Later that night, May 11th at 10:05 p.m., Tara Schwetz in the Office of the Director for NIH, she's the acting principal deputy director, she emails Lawrence Tabek. Mm-hmm. And in her email, she says, there is no way this is going out on May 18th. We're meeting tomorrow and we'll discuss more. Before it goes out, we will need to clear it and brief the Assistant Secretary of Health. So the Office of the Director is saying, yeah, there's no way we're going to allow this report.
We're not going to let this go.
Yeah. The next morning, the director of CDC's Division of Oral Health, Casey Hannon, attends a meeting with NTP, the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Health, and the Office of Director of NIH. And he emails others at CDC with his takeaways from the meeting. This is, okay. And he writes, the May 18th release date for the NTP report is almost certainly not going to happen. The Assistant Secretary of Health Office and NIH Office of Director are pretty clearly going to get more involved. Okay, which is what the NIDCR and CDC had been wanting, right? They wanted to get the higher level authorities at HHS involved to quash this thing. Okay, so they were getting traction. They could see that their work was paying off. Right. That same day, May 12th, the CDC has another meeting with the private dental lobbyists. Okay, Greg Holder, the CDC policy analyst, at this meeting, he starts talking to them about the NTP report and what's going on. But he asks that this discussion be, quote, off the record. Do you know why the CDC provided the information, quote, off the record?
No, I do not.
So what he had to say to them on that day was, quote, off the record. So we don't have minutes of what he said or notes of what he said, okay? The next day, Greg Holder at the CDC speaks with Judy Feinstein and Chris Wood, who are the leadership of this group that I talked about earlier, ASTDD. This is the group funded by CDC to promote fluoridation, okay? Greg Holder has a phone call with them, and he tells them, quote, CDC officials, Assistant Secretary for Health Rachel Levine, and others have looked at the NTP report and are pushing back hard at NTP. So Greg Holder's words are, we are, quote, pushing back hard at NTP. Holder also notes in that meeting that the NTP is, quote, really digging in and standing by their report. God forbid. The NTP is standing by its report. Fast forward to June 3rd, and you have emails from the CDC that confirm that the Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine, made a decision to put the report on hold. As one email says, quote, the latest we heard yesterday is that Assistant Secretary of Health Levine has put the report on hold until further notice. Now, Rachel Levine is the one who ultimately made the decision to put the NTP monograph on hold, right?
Objection, Wax Foundation.
I don't know that personally. I would imagine, I mean, because of her position, she may have the ultimate authority to do that.
But you were specifically told by the CDC that Rachel Levine made the decision, right?
I have been told that Rachel Levine made that decision.
Right, and you were told that by CDC leadership, right?
Objection made.
It could have been the CDC.
So they succeeded, the obstructionists, if you will, succeeded in quashing the report.
Absolutely. So I think the emails make it pretty clear what happened.
Right.
That the conclusions, the scientific conclusions of the NTP were not sufficiently compatible with the policy interests of water fluoridation.
Right.
And that the NIDCR and the CDC, which are principally concerned with promoting this policy,
Right.
found that unacceptable. They went up the ladder to the Assistant Secretary of Health and
Right.
convinced the Assistant Secretary to order the NTP to not release the report. That's what happened.